What's going on, everybody? My name is Josiah,
My name's James.
and here we are, first episode. Really excited to be in this. Kind of came up with this idea kind of on the fly. Me and James have known each other quite a while. Start off as, business partners, developed our relationship, got really close, and now we're also roommates, and we have a lot of ideas. This is just one of many, and I'm sure throughout the episodes you'll get to know us better. So we're not going to hit on that too much. But again, I'm Josiah. This is James, and welcome to the garage.
Cool.
All right, so let's start off with divine intervention, right?
Our first topic is going to be divine intervention versus free will. And we're going to talk about which one is more real, right? Which one we believe in.
So essentially,
if that makes sense.
I'm pretty confident in myself, right? So sometimes, I'll more or less convince myself that there's divine intervention. That way, it leaves no room for failure. You know what I mean by that?
Sort of, but I would obviously have to disagree with you on that one because I actually believe in free will. So
right, but I'm saying in the sense where you said, like, hypothetically, right? You believe in divine intervention, right?
yeah,
That would then allow somebody to have zero doubts about their future, correct?
it depends.
On
Well, if people believe in divine intervention, right, and destiny, then at that point, then they don't necessarily have to do anything, right? Because in a way, if they believe in their future, that means their future is taken care of if they believe hard enough, right? So say if I were to just sit here and absolutely do nothing for the next 2-3 years, do you think my destiny is really being fulfilled?
that's going with the hypothesis that you believe in destiny already, right? So in that theory, then yeah, I would say that something would come along, okay, your destiny would already be predetermined if you just sat here, right?
Okay.
So, I guess in our reality, it's about how much you can convince yourself that what you're pursuing is actually going to come to fruition, right?
Okay.
So, like, for example, I've convinced myself that I'm going to be extremely successful in business, wealth, generating wealth, and teaching people how to, create wealth, right? And I've fully convinced myself that it's divine intervention, right? Now, if I were to sit here and not do anything, then essentially nothing would get accomplished, right? Which then, who's to say that wasn't my destiny to begin with, right? That I had all these great ideas and then I gave up and then I just sat here and that was my destiny. But it's just, I guess, it's the belief of what I'm pursuing is my destiny. So it's going under the assumption that I already know my destiny.
Okay, so with that being said, that means if you believe in destiny and if you believe in great things or if you believe that you're not meant to do great things, that means you're already putting that thought in your mind, which means that you're going to live to fulfill that destiny, right? But again, I believe in free will because everybody is capable of doing great things. They just have to go out and do it, destiny or no destiny.
So you don't believe there's any kind of you don't think there's anything that correlates like the Elon Musks or the Jeff Bezos to the everyday person?
What do you mean?
If we were to take the average person that works at like McDonald's, right, drive-through, and we were to say, I want you to have an intelligent conversation with Elon Musk, right? Mm-hmm. How do you think that would go?
I don't know.
I'm going to the assumption that they're not alike. They're not the same. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Which I would then go into that whole potential realm, which you're talking about, right? And this brings up something really funny. I had a conversation with one of my buddies, right? And I told him, and shout out Joe Rogan, I told him that I had more potential for excellence than Joe Rogan. And it went back and forth. Pretty much the summary of the story is that, like, end goal potential, like, whatever your potential already is set at, is set, right? Which kind of dives into that whole divine intervention thing, right? And the same thing with Joe Rogan. Whatever his potential is, that is his max potential. Do you believe that everyone has a max potential?
Max potential as in is capped?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Because again, even right now, people are still doing great things, right? Maybe, well, you have to take a step back and kind of look at what max potential is, right? Because if someone's going to be, say, a musician or an artist, right? And what their max potential is I have to say that max potential is probably perspective, right? It's got to be perspective, because your max, how you define max potential, right, is based off of what you think it is. But say if somebody wanted to be an artist or a musician, and if they wanted to play on YouTube and just produce music on YouTube, or maybe they want to be famous one day, right? Then that's what they're gonna strive for, and that's their max potential, unless if they choose to strive more. Does it make sense?
But I mean, that would I mean it does, but at the same time, like, I mean, I don't know, man. It kind of goes. I think about it just like bodybuilding, right? Like, at some point there has to be a cap. You know what I mean? Unless like you're transcendent, okay, right? Which I could agree that the majority of people, if anybody is transcendent, right, can reach what is set in their DNA, their brain capacity, like on a very, and correct me if I'm wrong here, biological breakdown, right? Their brain can only, have so much room, right? So I think that max potential could definitely be a real thing.
Okay, so max potential, right?
Right.
I would, based off of what you're saying, the max potential would probably be owning the whole world. One person owning the whole world, controlling the whole world, if that's what you're talking about. That'd be a little on the extreme, but I would say, okay, let's say there is a max potential.
Yeah.
But I do think that nobody's gonna possibly reach all of that max potential. You know what I'm saying?
But that's still saying that there is a max potential.
Yeah. But that's an extreme case, though. An extreme example, right?
Going back to the point, free will versus divine intervention, right? So if max potential is a real thing, then wouldn't that already be predetermined? I mean, you can't really argue that statement because the words kind of line up perfectly, right? If there is a max potential, which means it's predetermined that this is your max.
Okay, max.
And I mean, you have to look at it, right? It's either going to be one of two things. It's either going to be on a DNA structure basis, meaning like the father and the mother who conceived the child, right? Their DNA, specific parts of their DNA got in, and this kid, because of his DNA, has a max potential. Or you bring in the whole religion side of it, which I mean, that kind of is more towards the divine intervention side rather than the DNA structure, right? So you can either look at two sides of the spectrum. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it sounds like your max potential is physical based, right?
Physical was in like your body?
Yeah, as in your body. So because you've only brought up the example of bodybuilding, right?
Right.
But say somebody was smart enough, say they had all the networking power, they knew everybody, and they had the knowledge, and they were the smartest person in the world, then they would somehow possibly reach that max potential. So
yeah.
In my opinion, I still think max potential is still an idea, right? And it's all about perspective too, because we don't know what that max potential is. Because
I mean, in a sense we do though. We have an idea, right? And what is the max percentage of the brain that we use on a daily basis, right? So that already means that there's a max. We cannot go forward. The question would be, what percentage of the brain are we able to use?
I think it's 10 or 20%.
I think it's less than that. I think it's about 7. I'm gonna say 7. We're having someone look it up right now. That way, our shit's not wrong. But if that's the case, right, then there's like a legitimate stopping point. 10%. Okay, so it's 10%. So, and what's your resource on that? Yeah.
According to a survey from 2013, around 65% of Americans believe that we only use 10% of our brain.
Okay, so that's a survey, right?
Okay.
Can you find something that's like a legitimate study? But anyway, kind of getting away from that. So with the idea or the concept that we only have X amount of space in our brain that we can actually use, we have a capacity. Capacity meaning cap, meaning max, right? So saying that we don't have a max potential in itself is kind of a defeat. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't argue the fact that there has to be some sort of max potential.
I would still definitely disagree, man. I would still disagree because, okay, I will agree that there is a max potential, right?
Okay, yeah.
Sure.
There
sure.
has to be.
Because there has to be. Because, right. Sure. But I still firmly believe that everybody has free will. Everybody is capable of doing great things. Now, destiny could be more or less of a psychological thing, because if you believe that you are destined to do great things, you're going to do everything in your willpower to do that great thing that you believe in. Whereas if you believe that, you know what, I'm not smart enough. You know what, I can't do that. You know what, I can never be like that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to severely limit yourself to doing exactly what you want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put that cap, that restriction on yourself.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from.
So if there is no free will, and if everything's just destiny, then essentially there is no point in doing anything, because it's bound to happen sooner or later.
Well, I think that's actually an interesting topic that came to mind. Is there was a I don't remember what the source was. I believe it was Socrates, okay. And he was talking with the empire at the time, which I believe was the Roman Empire, right? And they were asking him, and again, this information could definitely be incorrect. This is just based off memory. They were kind of going into. They asked him, they were like, okay, so how do we solve everything in the world? Like, what is the answer basically to world peace, right? And his answer was actually kind of shocking. It was mass genocide, right? Essentially, what he was planning out was, okay, in order to do this, we have to kill everyone that is below the age of like 3 or 7. I think it was 3, right? Or above that age, right? Leaving only 4 or 5 or 6 individuals like that raise these kids essentially to be like robots, right? They only go off of effectiveness, like efficientness, right? Basically, taking away their free will without them even knowing. So I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that this whole free will concept, right? Do you think that it could be based around what we believe growing up? Because that was his theory, was that if we teach everybody to be the most efficient that they can possibly be, that will be the answer to world peace. Essentially taken away from their free will. They don't have any thought. You know, it's like that one movie. What was it called?
The Giver?
Yeah, The Giver, right? Perfect example, right? No one had free will, right? They were all, you know what I'm saying?
Everybody had a role.
Everyone had a role, exactly.
But
so essentially, taking away the free will.
Well, at that point, then, if you're taking away the free will, then at that point, everybody's destiny is literally a role in society.
It wouldn't be divine intervention. It would be human intervention.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I still firmly believe in free will. But if Socrates says that mass genocide is the way to go to, achieve world peace,
mm-hmm.
then I could honestly, believe it or not, I could actually see where he's coming from, because then like everybody.
You know the role.
Yeah.
I mean, we are definitely not saying that that's okay. Mass genocide is not okay, people. That's not what we're saying on the podcast.
Yes, I believe in free will. All right.
Okay. So, do you think that the reason I possibly could want to believe in divine intervention is that way in my brain, right? Because kind of going into another point that we're going to talk about, which is like the law of attraction, right? Okay. Which is if you believe something so deeply, so it is so rooted that essentially the theory is saying that anything is essentially possible, right? Obviously within the stature of like gravity, right? Like if I believe with all my heart that if I jump off of a building, I'm not going to fall to the ground and die. I mean, there are obviously limitations, mm-hmm. right? However, kind of what it's going into is like in terms of business, like I'm going to be successful, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be the best teacher in the world, I'm going to be the best father in the world, right? You kind of program yourself to act a certain way or be a certain way, right? Because you keep telling yourself over and over and over again, right? So would that be considered divine intervention?
No, it'd be ourselves. It would be us controlling ourselves, because at that point we would be using destiny as an excuse, an effective excuse, or as a stimulus to trick us in a way, or make us think that, you know what, it's my destiny to do this. It's my destiny to achieve great things, and I'm going to go do it. And it goes back to what I said a while ago, that it's based off of human mind, right? Mm-hmm. The human mind.
Yeah.
Right. So if you believe you're going to do great things, you're going to do great things.
I was actually listening to a podcast. I think it was the Joe Rogan, Dan Penna podcast, which was great, by the way. I highly recommend to listen to that one. Joe Rogan always makes great content. Dan Penna is obviously a living legend, right? But he was pretty much saying that you can have all the amazing ideas you want, right? You can have all these like innovative, world-changing ideas, but without action, it's pointless. So, do any of us really have free will to begin with? Like coming into a culture such as America or wherever else you're from in the world, right? Because you're influenced by your culture, right? You're influenced by your environment, right? So, like, there has to be something in your head that's already engraved, which is controlling whatever behavior you're acting on, right? So, is that free will, or is that influence?
I would have to say both, because everybody has free will to do whatever they want, but there are rules and regulations and laws that restrict the type of things we want to do. Like if I wanted to go and rob a bank, I can't do that. I mean, technically I could,
right?
But
there's consequences.
There are consequences involved.
Right.
So, you know what? I would still say that there still is free will, because we are capable of doing whatever we want. Not saying that it's always right, but we still can.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually does depend on where people are born and raised as well, because there are some countries out there, some states, and some economic class levels, right, out there that will restrict how well you do. It is definitely up to the individual to learn it if they so choose to.
Okay, so let me interrupt you for a second, right? So, okay, so the same thing though could be said like in the side of religion, right? Where the Christians believe that it's their sole purpose to go out to these other worlds and show these people the way to Christianity. I mean, you can look at it the same way as entrepreneurship. You know what I'm saying? Like the Christian faith believes that you should go to all ends of the earth and spread the word of God, right? But in all reality, like asking someone to change their religion that they've been born and raised in, right? That's pretty much asking somebody to completely change their way of life. Something they've always known the entire time. So, like, let's say we go to, like, a Middle Eastern country where they practice the Muslim religion, right? Try, you know what I mean? Try going over there to Syria or somewhere like that and try and convince someone to join your faith, right? That's almost ludicrous, right? Same thing could be said for entrepreneurship, right? You go over to a foreign country and you're like, hey, look, you're living your life wrong. Like, this is the way you need to live your life. Like, genuinely, what do you think the chances of that happening are?
I could say it's unlikely, but it's still possible.
Give me a percentage.
I don't even know the percentage.
I mean, okay, like
Probably say less than 1%.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So saying that everyone has the, and I guess if you use the term potential, you also have to measure success, right, as what we look at. Okay, so, right, so we are going off of the kind of, I don't know the good word for it. We're kind of going off of that success is measured in basis of wealth or number of businesses that you sell or that sort of thing, you know. But in these foreign countries, they may, because I've only visited a few foreign countries, they may have a different view of success as a whole. You know what I mean? Like, okay, like my nation is impoverished. You know what I mean? So they might have that political route. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe and I know in a lot of countries, like I believe it's Norway. Can you look that up for me? Pretty much right out of high school, they join the military. So military is like enforced right out of high school, and I don't know the stipulation on it. And I believe it's Norway. Again, it's not facts. It's just based off what I remember. But right out of high school, they have to do military, and they're given a job. You know what I mean? So in some countries, they're just immediately given a job, right? And that kind of takes away from that free will. And then try going over to that foreign country and then explain to them entrepreneurship, right? It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous, you know, because in their mind, they're doing what they need to do already. You know what I mean? So I mean, if we're measuring potential and max potential or whatever, we also have to look at the measurement of success.
If Norway's,
you got anything on Norway? Yeah, look up. Does Norway have enforced jobs? Continue.
All right. So say if Norway, right, has military requirements. Say you turn like 18, you're supposed to serve like 2 years or
Yeah.
whatever the facts are, right? Then sure, during that time they are restricted. Just like it's almost no different than going to school because kids are supposed to go to school, right?
It's enforced.
Yeah, it's enforced. So after that, when you're on your own,
Mm-hmm.
you might as well say you have free will because then you're on your own. You're there to do whatever you want.
Right.
So, but at the same time, you have to think about what success means. Success may mean different things for you and I, but
they don't.
but for most Americans, sometimes it's just, hey, you know what? I want to get married. I want to have 2.5 kids and a house with a white picket fence.
I mean, would you say that the level of entrepreneurship in America is higher than any other country? Did you have something on Norway? Okay. Can you look up the top 100 richest people in the world for me? We're gonna go based off this, right? We're gonna look at how many companies and that top level, that top tier, that top 100, out of let's read the first 20 names, right?
Okay.
We'll go off that and see, okay, how many of these people are American or domestic? I mean, foreign, not domestic. Yeah.
I would have to say that would not be accurate because say there's like 3 of the richest guys that are in America on that list, right?
Right.
But then every single other name on that list is from another country. And at the same time, foreign, right? We can't let's say there's a few in Japan, there's a few in Germany. We're essentially measuring America versus everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be
An accurate measurement.
accurate.
I disagree just for the simple fact that if we look at, if we know that the top, let's say, can you go ahead and start reading? We need to keep a laptop here. Okay. So, Bernard Arnault, I don't know enough about him. I've never heard of the name. But we have number 1, Jeff Bezos, American, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg. Bernard, he's French. Warren Buffett at 6. Steve Ballmer, American. I don't know how to pronounce this name, so I apologize. Mukesh Ambani, he is Indian. Larry Page, American. Sergey Brin, who is is Russian-born American computer. So he was born in Russia and then moved to America, where he built his empire. Vladimir Putin, I did not know that.
What?
Vladimir Putin is the 11th richest man in the world.
Wow.
I did not know that.
That is pretty interesting.
Yeah, had no idea. I don't even know how he acquired that much net worth. Then you have Larry Ellison, who's American. 13th is definitely don't know how to pronounce that name, but he's French as well. Mackenzie Bezos, like Jeff Bezos.
Okay.
That's his wife. Funny story about that, right? So do you know why she's listed as the 14th richest woman in the world, or richest person in the world?
I'm gonna assume that they got
Got
divorced.
divorced, and Jeff Bezos had to split his winnings with her, or his money with her because she didn't sign a prenup. Which goes to show you,
What?
listeners, sign a prenup if you're.
Get one filled out.
Yeah,
Just in
100%.
case. Just in case.
Definitely.
But I don't know if California,
I don't know that either.
accepts prenups.
Well, either way, Jeff Bezos made her instantly the 14th richest person in the entire world. That's absolutely ludicrous, in my opinion. But she's American as well. So basically what I'm getting at, right, we just listed 15 of the top richest people in the entire world, and more than half of them were American. I mean, I'm just saying that, there's a reason it's called the land of opportunity. There's a reason why so many people are flooding to America, which goes back to the entire point of, you said everyone has the same level of, or potential of success.
So yes, I did say that. So everybody has the same level of potential, in my opinion. Some people maybe are born a little bit gifted than others, but what they have is and can be limited by their culture, their environment, their surroundings.
No,
and like
it
people.
definitely is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
that goes without saying, right?
Yeah.
We just kind of like disprove that, right?
Sure.
Could you agree with that?
Indifferent, right? Like
Okay.
not until I have the full facts on that. But anyways, so say you're picking someone from a much more impoverished nation, right?
Right.
And if you pick someone in the U.S. and say the person in the U.S. has all of this resources, right?
Mhm.
And this person in the much impoverished nation, they're gonna have a hard time getting to the same level where the guy in the U.S. is.
Yeah, definitely.
But I still believe that that person in the impoverished nation is still very capable of getting to that same level. It's just gonna take longer.
I mean, then you have to look at willpower, right? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I think we've all had some sort of breaking point, right? But if you're living in, a nation with less opportunities, right, you have to take into consideration the humanity aspect of it, right? No one's going to be Superman, right? Or not everybody can be Superman, right? Not every single person is gifted with willpower, right? I mean, yeah, do I think that willpower can be learned? I mean, of course willpower can be learned, right? But they have to be surrounded by people who already have that trait and then can show them how things can be done, right? And then and not only that, but they have to accept it. That's again going back to my statement about going as a Christian, trying to go over. I'm not, saying that I am this, but if a Christian goes over to a foreign nation and tries to convince these people to join their religion, I'm saying like they're gonna look at them like they're crazy, right? It's the same concept, right? They're gonna go over and even if you're a motivational speaker, like I mean, again, don't know the stats, but I can't imagine there's a whole lot of motivational speakers that are going to Syria.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like almost like, okay, these people have a way of life, like going over there and try to convince them of entrepreneurship is essentially like not going to be very effective.
I think I'm starting to understand your point a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're essentially saying somebody who was not raised with a certain type of mindset, right? So say for an athlete, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the person does not have or is not raised around an athletic family or an athletic environment, they're less likely to be athletic because they are less likely to want to strive.
I would say absolutely, like definitely,
Okay.
without a question,
Okay.
right? I mean, do I think that it's impossible? No. I mean, you can't saying something is impossible. In my opinion, unless it's like a very direct, like gravity doesn't exist. Well, obviously it exists,
Okay.
right? So gravity is not impossible. Gravity is, right? It just is, right? Or saying, I'm going to fly one day. Again, impossible. Or saying, just any kind of crazy, ludicrous example that you could give, right? There's obviously, that's impossible. But saying that, like, I'm going to be the richest man in the world, is it likely? Like, probably not, right? But is it impossible? No, right?
Absolutely.
But is it very likely? Again, no.
Yeah.
Which, we've talked about that before,
Mm-hmm.
where we take these very small decimals and we're like, okay, like, yeah, there's that 1% though. So you can't say for absolute fact that's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the facts.
Absolutely.
Right?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. So,
Let's move to the law of attraction, right?
yeah.
So since we're already talking about destiny and free will and even willpower in this case, let's talk about the law of attraction.
Okay. So essentially what the law of attraction is like wishing things into your life. And they don't use the term wishing. Okay, so based off of like the book The Secret, again, another highly recommended book. That the book's amazing. Like it genuinely does change people's life because it's the power of belief,
Okay.
right? It taps into essentially, it's the same reason why people in religion think that there are miracles, right? Because they believe in a god or gods, and then something happens that is quote unquote unexplainable, right? And then they look at that and they're like, like God, right? Essentially, it's the same thing. It's the power of belief. And that almost dives into the same point that I was getting at, right? Where I use divine intervention as a tool, right? I say, okay, I'm destined for greatness. I am going to be successful, right? That is me applying the law of attraction. In a sense.
Yeah. I could definitely see
Does
that.
that make sense?
Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily say, well, in your case, if you believe in destiny enough to the point where you're gonna do whatever you can in your willpower to get there,
Yeah.
then sure, by all means, believe in destiny,
Mm-hmm.
because what I believe in is people living their lives to whatever capacity and whatever makes them feel happy, right?
Right.
And I don't want to force my thoughts and will and whatever I want to do in life onto other people, because again, if people want to just work and retire at 65 and have a family of 2.5 kids, house, white picket fence, right? Then that's fine too.
Yeah.
But to say that destiny is, well, let's not necessarily talk about destiny, but let's talk about kind of religion in a way, right?
Okay.
So there's destiny in religions, and there are miracles as well, right?
Perceived.
Yeah, perceived miracles. So sometimes things just happen because they just happen.
Yeah.
But you could say, "Oh, it's a miracle," when reality is it just happens, right? It's just a low probability of it happening.
Or right again, and this is where the law of attraction is like really interesting to me, because let's call her patient 1, right? Patient 1 has cancer. She attended a church for her entire life, right? What are all of those churches going to do for that person?
They're going to pray.
Right. Which essentially is diving into the law of attraction. And that's kind of like the argument they make, right? Where it's like, okay, like, why do you think all these religions have miracles? Right? It's because there's a congregation of individuals that are like massing together their belief, right? And then something happens, right? And and as crazy as it sounds, it almost makes sense, right? Because miracles happen all across all religion, right? Or they wouldn't believe in it, right? Because, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, do I think that every single person is going to see a miracle in their life or what they perceive to be as a miracle? No. But if something does happen, right, they're going to almost gift it to the God that they praise, right?
Okay.
Which is essentially what the law of attraction is stating, because everybody believed in it so wholeheartedly that it just happened, right?
Okay. Well, I would actually have to disagree with you on this one.
Oh, no, I'm not saying I agree with that. I think it's almost ludicrous to believe that as well.
Okay. Yeah. So say this patient 1 has cancer, right?
Yeah.
And everybody in the church is praying for this one patient. Okay. And then by miracle, this patient is completely cured.
Right. Which has happened. I mean,
sure. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, but what about patient 2 through infinity? Right? Do you think all of them are going to survive? No. But I think there may be a form of,
I mean, that's assuming that
I don't know if the word bias is correct in this case, because if you look at the type of people that survive and say that, oh, because everybody prayed and said that, oh, it's a miracle, but what about everybody else? So say, like, I don't know what the stats are, but let's say 1 out of 100 people who have cancer survive, right? So say that one person survives, that person's a miracle, but the other 99 is, not so fortunate.
What if that 99% doesn't attend church, and so they don't have that backing of, you know what I'm saying?
So you think?
No, I'm just presenting
sure.
clause.
Yeah. I like to live my life based off of things that make sense.
Right. Which
right.
I mean,
so
yeah.
So even in my opinion, right, and I know for almost certainty, right, like 100 people who have cancer, they all attend the same church, and if everybody in the community were to pray and hope that they were well and make sure that they didn't die, right? Pray enough to the point where they hope they didn't die. I would have to say the only way for them to fully survive is some resilient immune systems. I would have to say great technology, great doctors, right? I have to say there would have to be all of these outside variables and factors that played a big role, so that way these 100 individuals would survive. But at the same time, you could also say, well, at that point, then the Christians or whoever in this church, faith, right, whatever faith that these guys believe in, that they prayed enough, they could say it's a miracle that all 100 people survived. When in reality, it was really just.
But who's to say? Okay, again, we can't put a guarantee certainty, because again, you can't 100% prove that God's not real, You just can't.
Sure,
There's no way.
sure. That's why I like to have an open mind. I'd probably say I'm agnostic, if anything.
Yeah. So, pretty much what I got from that, right? Which is like, you in order for a miracle to happen, there has to be some sort of variable.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying? Does there have to be an outside variable in order for a miracle to happen?
I don't know. I really don't know. Let me think.
I mean, if let's take
give an example.
okay, let's take patient one. Let's take patient one again for an example. And again, I can't remember specific circumstances, but I mean, I was born in a Christian household. I've tried going back to church before, right? And then you hear these insane stories of like she refused treatment because she believed whatever was to happen, which, you know, God does say that. Or not God, but the Bible, right? It says, you know, put your trust in me, and I will guide you to, you know, whatever you want. Yeah. You know what I'm saying, essentially. And so let's say patient one just refuses treatment, right? And then gets better. And based on stories that you hear, right, has happened. So there's no outside variable there.
So I would actually have to agree with you on this one, because there maybe it all comes down to the mindset.
And it really does. Right, and that's what I'm getting at, because that's what the law of attraction is. It is pretty much like as a byproduct of the law of attraction, it changes your mindset. It just does. Okay. Right? But instead of putting your power and trust in God, you're putting your power and trust in yourself.
Okay.
That's essentially.
All right, because I know that there are stories out there where patients are tested, right, in surgery, right? So there's, say, I don't remember the exact story and the exact testing, the exact experiment, but there were three people with knee problems, right? Mm-hmm. 3 individuals with knee problems. They all needed surgery. The 2 that got surgery were legitimate surgeries, right? They were legitimate surgeries. Doctors actually operated on them. Boom. Okay. And then the 3rd one, all they did was just cut the knee open. They were like salt and water, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And then they stitched it up. And all 3 of them recovered, because the two that had the actual surgery believed that they got better because they actually had the surgery. But in the 3rd one actually got better as well, because he probably thought he had the surgery and it was all in his mind.
Okay, so yeah, I totally agree with what you were saying in terms of the whole miracle thing, right? Yeah. But how far is that actually going to take somebody, right? Before action is needed for progress. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So, I mean, I guess the next question then would probably be somewhere around the lines of like the whole, you know, procrastinating around it, like do you rely, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. So, pretty much what the question you're asking is, why do people procrastinate when they know they got stuff to do, and that by doing these things they get further in life? Yeah. Okay. Well, I probably have to say that it's probably because of fear. It's the fear of failure. It's the fear of rejection. It's just fear in general. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think there's so many different variables in terms of procrastination, right? Like you have to look at, okay, kind of what Alex Becker talks about a little bit, right? Where he's like, okay, why do people not do what they set out to do, right? I mean, you could look at the 15-minute thing, right, where someone has to focus for 15 minutes. Now, I think it just goes into the chemical addiction to dopamine and serotonin, right? Like these people are like hardcore addicted. So whenever they're doing something they don't like, they're becoming unhappy.
I know what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah. So, and because they're unhappy, then they're like, okay, I don't feel good while I'm doing this. Like, what can I possibly do to feel good now, right? Okay. And I think that's one of the biggest variables when it comes to, you know.
Okay, so I'm gonna paraphrase what Alex Becker said, right? He said, "Why do people pursue happiness and not fulfillment?" So the difference between happiness and fulfillment is happiness is instant. It's
the instant gratification.
Yeah, instant gratification. Whereas if you work and do what you're supposed to do, you're going to fulfill your life a lot more.
Well, I mean, okay, so that hold on, right? Because that kind of goes into the whole like idea of like what somebody perceives as like what their purpose is in life. Because I mean, you could if your purpose in life was to be a great father, right? Absolutely, you know what I'm saying? Like, go be a great father, but is that going to really give you that fulfillment, right? And I think that also has a major part in the culture and society, right? Especially, you look at kids who grow up without a father, and I think the percentage on that is relatively high, right? So with that being said, you have these kids that are influenced or brought up from a young age to believe this is what you need to pursue, this is what you need to do. You know what I mean? You do this, right? And then they find themselves miserable like 30 years down the line or even less because they're pursuing something that doesn't even give them that fulfillment. And they hate themselves because it makes sense to want to be a great father, right?
Yeah.
That makes total sense. You know what I'm saying? And I think if you ask anybody because of the culture, they're going to be like, oh, you don't want to be a great father and you want to pursue other things. Like, they're going to be like, yeah, no, you're totally right. Like, and then they're going to go to sleep and they're going to be like, I fucking hate my life.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
You see what I'm saying there?
Yeah. So when I'm on my deathbed, I don't want to be able to think back and say, wow, I could have done this.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, my life was completely worthless. But a lot of people don't pursue the goals and the dreams that they have for themselves because of the little instant gratifications that they choose to do in the moment, right? So say like social media, right? What's the point of being on social media?
I mean, it depends on what your purpose is. Right. I mean, but if we're talking in terms of specifically just that instant gratification, I think it's just more than anything, it's just a time filler. It's something to fill void time, right?
Yeah. And it, in a way, it kind of makes you lose focus of the things you got to do because let's say you have stuff you got to worry about, right?
Yeah.
Say you have a project coming up. Say you have an essay, paper, an essay, or whatever it is that you got to do. That's something that people are really, I don't even know if scared is the right word, but like it's annoying, right? In a way, because why do people just procrastinate? Like, I don't understand. But
I mean, you kind of have to understand, right? Because again, it's the human condition, right? It's the environment that we were brought up in. It was I think it all has to play in terms of culture. I mean, you look, okay, let's take an extreme example, right? The Buddhist monks, right? They don't procrastinate. They just don't do it, right? Like, I mean, I'm talking traditional Buddhist monk, right? Meditate. Okay. Like, they have a set schedule. They have a set thing they do, right? I mean, what all that's telling me is, like, in terms of procrastinators, like, they just never had any kind of structure in their life. They have never had to have any form of discipline in their life, right? They're just out here, like, sporadically, anytime they see something that is obtainable or easy, right? They're just like, okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that.
I actually, I know what you're saying. So it's pretty much deciding, hey, am I gonna do this thing where it's completely easy and it's gonna give me pleasure in the moment right now, or am I gonna work on my essay or my project? That's more important than going on social media or watching TV or playing video games, right?
Right.
And it goes back to the dopamine and the serotonin.
Mm-hmm.
That's released in the brain because you feel happiness in that moment. You feel satisfaction. You feel pleasure in that moment.
Yeah.
But once that wears off,
you instantly need that another high. Yeah. Which, kind of going back on one of your points that you were saying, right? Even if, like, let's say for an example, they do decide, okay, like I need to focus on my project, they're not even going to be fully focused on it. Mm-hmm. They're just going to be focused because it's just like a withdrawal. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, I'm going to be sober, right? And if it's, let's say someone who's strung out, right? And then all of a sudden they're like, fuck, dude, like my life sucks. I need to get sober. And then they're sober for a few days, right? I don't know the statistic. I know it's really, really high though for addicts to relapse.
Yeah.
It's like super high, stupid high, right? I mean, you look at anything, caffeine, cigarettes, nicotine, like, because they release specific chemicals in the brain. And when the brain is depleted of those, the immediate thought is, okay, I need more. And I think it's very applicable with the same thing with this whole project thing. Like, if someone has a project, right, they're going to go do that project, but immediately they're going to say, like, fuck, man, like I haven't checked my phone in like 3 seconds or 10 seconds, and they're going to freak out, right? And even if they do focus on their project for like an hour and a half, like, what is really going to get accomplished out of that? I mean, they might get a little bit of work done, but are they like maximizing their efforts? You can't. It's impossible. You know what I mean? There's no way.
Why do you say that?
Because they're going to be focused on other things. I'm talking in regards to somebody who's like heavily addicted to their phone. Like,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Or someone who's heavily addicted to the serotonin dopamine release and they don't have any kind or form of discipline to focus. And I think, and that makes a lot of sense too, right? Because you look at a lot of these, like, I'll use Dan Penna as an example, right? Or Alex Becker, even better. Super minimal. Like he said, I got rid of literally everything I possibly could to become as minimalist as possible, because he's basically going sober for an X amount of time, right? And not reintroducing that into his life. Mm-hmm. And then whenever he needs to focus, he can actually focus because he's not going through withdrawals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So we're running out of time, guys. We just kind of wanted to like introduce the garage. We hope that you liked this episode. Stay tuned, subscribe, follow us on all different platforms, and we will see you next week. Thanks, guys.
All right, peace.